Okay, so I have mentioned several times already how one of the methods for silencing people is political speech. Okay, you can make a word something where it's not politically correct to talk about that or say that word. Okay, so the word that I wanted to really bring up and discuss here is the word communism. And communism really became, started having that status of you can't talk about it, you can't criticize it, you can't say anything about it during the Cold War. During the McCarthy era. Okay, I'm sure a lot of people realize or understand some things about what happened during that era and why communism became one of those words that you couldn't really talk about. But really, it has to do with, it stems from the McCarthy trials. And, when Senator Joe McCarthy took it upon himself to go after communist sympathizers, and mostly, a lot of the people he was going after were people who were like in our government, and also affiliated with the Communist Party, or actual spies. Okay, so how those trials came out to the public was really bad. Okay, and they made it look really bad, and made him out to be somebody who was on a witch hunt, Now, I would like to examine that a little bit, okay? Because McCarthyism is the word that came out of those trials, and basically means somebody who's getting all hysterical about communism. All that wording is part of the reason why nobody can really have a good discussion about communism without there being a fight over it or something. Okay, so I want to go back to the trials and really look at that, because and what happened there. Okay, so number one was the fact that our government realized back then that the Soviet Union was taking over countries, okay, and changing their system of government to communism, okay, one after another. Okay, so we understood that. Maybe our people didn't understand it, which is a mistake, but the government understood that, and Joe McCarthy understood that. And one of the things about how they would take over governments was that there had to be at least 10% of communists inside the government already, at the point of time when everything came crashing down, so that 10% could just pick up and continue on as if nothing happened, but all of a sudden that country is communist. Okay, so we understood that. Okay, our government did, that's what they were doing. So the idea that there were communists inside our government was very concerning, okay? Considering the Soviet Union was very clearly using the same tactics on the United States that they were using on other countries, okay? So, you might think of that as not a crime to be a part of a party or whatever, but yeah, that's the reality of things and why he was going after those people. Okay, so then the other category of people that he was going after were people who he was accusing of being spies, being, communists or Soviet operatives, okay? So, if you watch the trials, you'll see that a lot of those people that he accused, and I'm going to say accuse because that's the word they used back then, and I'll tell you why. But a lot of the people that he accused pled the fifth. They wouldn't say anything. That's highly suspect, right? But the way they made it into a whole circus made it seem like Joe McCarthy was the one off his rocker, and he was the one that was, just unfairly persecuting people, okay? And people to this day still believe that he was unfairly persecuting people. But in reality, the biggest problem was that he was not able to reveal his sources, okay? So, except for maybe one or two, okay? So, his main source was Elizabeth Bentley, and she had went to the FBI and confessed everything, okay? After being pursued for some time, she finally gave in and spilled the beans. And she had many, many, many people that she was able to name and give positions for because she was a handler, okay? So, there were other sources, and these sources were not declassified until years and years later, all right? These were intercepts, okay? And they're in the Venona files, okay? The intercepts corroborate what Elizabeth Bentley is saying. And a third source is Vasilyev's notebooks, which is a defector who brought over his notebook of names and information, and that also corroborates everything. So all these innocent people that Joe McCarthy just terrorized, we now know, because we have the evidence that's declassified, we now know that they were guilty, okay? But, yeah, years and years later, we're still treating Joe McCarthy like an unhinged maniac, and still going on this thing where we can't say anything bad about communism because of McCarthyism,